In this video, I will explore organized crime, cults, the New World Order, and the martial arts disagreement that evolved into our modern day social order, etc. Right now you see an Igbo samurai, so to speak. This is the original samurai idea, the African, who has African symbols that became Japanese samurai ones over time. I've gone over that in my other videos. Here's from the Narmer palette, the sandal carrier. Notice he has a kind of Shinto gate, or sun gate, on his necklace, and a black belt, Kuro Obi. Obi in Igbo means king. Igbo also is a play on words for Obi. Okay, with the G is silent. I-G-B-O. I've gone over this quite a bit. Next we see the Narmer palette, so you can get a view and put it into reference. Okay, you have Narmer, you know, he's a tall African kind of shaped guy. He's from Deccan, which is in southern or upper Egypt, and obviously people from his temple. The falcon is the fastest animal on earth. The hawk, you know, the falcon is a kind of a hawk, a green falcon, I believe, and that gives you the kind of light contact, pure sun temple, righteous indignation style, with an emphasis on righteous indignation and conquering evil. Okay, so now we have a leopard killing a pep. Okay, so another way to look at it is a pup, right? A puppy dog, you know, and it can be seen as a baby set, is one way to interpret it. Well, there's a long story why that is. Okay, I don't have time to explore that right now. So there's a connection to Set. You know, they said Ra was seen. You know, some people interpreted Apep as a primitive version of Ra. You know, Ra is a baby. So, you know, moving on. You gotta look at it in terms of martial arts to understand why that is. So here we have the leopard on the Igbo Uku statue art. Again, this is the direction of the cult of Ra and the cult of Haru. You know, Eri, right? The H is the fence. Okay, you have Eri in Igbo land, and you have Eri in Ethiopia, and then other places as well, but these are perhaps the most significant. Moving on, we have the writings about the three groups in Babylon. You had the farmers, which are more like the Igbos, right? Cane, yam cultivation, right? The cattle cult, which are more like, you know, Abel, right? So he was a herder, he was a shepherd, he had flocks, and so sheep, goat, cattle, you know, the emphasis of these groups, you know, and you also see this with the Hyksos to a certain degree. This goes back to the difference between the fishermen, which were seen as the cult of Haru, the primitive hawk tribes, you know, who had hawk deities, and you had the people in the field with the farming and agriculture, and you had the people with the flocks. Okay, so one of them was more Set, you know, and of course the sun settled in the west, right? Sun rises in the east and sets in the west, in the heart of Africa and so on. So the sun settled at its heart's location. And I don't have time to explore that, its significance, but it doesn't mean that the followers are Set, obviously. So now we should be at the Sumerian cylinder seal, the moon cult. Look at the figure it out. Look at his shape, look at his beard, look at his hat, right? And there's a lot of things like this in Mortal Kombat and Shao Kahn, or excuse me, this one guy, and so on. You know, has a certain hat, okay? And so does Raiden, and these are significant as well. So now we see the Sumerian guy being defeated by an early king in the Old Kingdom, I believe in the first dynasty. Okay, he's being conquered. Basically his presentation style is being called out. If you go back to the other one, he has his hand in a chamber, right? The horse stance, martial arts, right? It was horse scale, martial. Okay, so you have him, you know, chambering his fist. Okay, so it goes back to the wordplay on love. I'll explore that later. All right, so then remember the moon temples are conquered. Okay, so the KKK comes out at night. So eventually we're going to get to the connection there with the moonshine, money, moon E, right? Another wordplay, right? The U or the long O, perhaps. Okay, moon E, right? The E versus the A, the gender neutral spirit versus the pure masculine spirit. And of course, people who are more concerned with presentation and appearances are women, and men are more concerned with the actual application of the art. Okay, so here we have the KKK, early KKK uniform. It's hard to find references along this. It could very well be that this is just connected to it, but one way or another, it proves my point. And you have the moon symbolism on the KKK outfit, and you have the moonshine, right? They come out at night with the moon and they burn the cross, right? The moonlight versus the sunlight. All right, so now let me talk about Sergei Mikhailoff, and more importantly, his ally, Simeon Mogilevich. Okay, probably slaughtered that, I apologize. So who are their allies? Well, who are the allies of Russia, first of all? Okay, because he was born in the Ukrainian, he was born in Ukraine to a Jewish family in the Kiev, right? Kiev, a very significant place in modern history, recent history. Okay, so we have the Iranian allies, Assad and Putin. Okay, Mogilevich is said to have a relationship with Putin, to be on good terms with him before this one whistleblower or something was assassinated. You know, it's on the knowledge is out there. Okay, who are the allies of his greater Russian syndicate, where he's said to be the boss of bosses of most Russian syndicates? Well, the allies are very interesting indeed. We have mob allies, Italian mafia, Serbian mafia. He has business alliances and partnerships with the Colombian cartels, the Chinese triads. This information could be a little bit old, but it's still significant one way or another. He's said to have an alliance with the Nazi lowriders prison gang. So when you start following the money and the alliances, the working relationship with the Mexican mafia, who has assimilated the Armenian kind of street gangs in LA to a certain degree, which takes us to the Armenian mafia, you know, serious criminal organizations. Obviously, when you talk about these people, even the Aryan Brotherhood obviously is included, and they've gone on record saying, if you talk about our business, you're through, in a documentary, you know, prison gang documentaries. So it's obvious that there's a code of silence, there's secret societies, and so on, and these people are serious about enforcing them. These people have legitimate allies, you know. I have it written down here somewhere. Said to be allied with the mayor of Moscow, you know, Mogilevich is, okay. The former head of the security service in Ukraine, Putin, and friends in high places that tipped him off, that kept him from being assassinated, I believe in Czechoslovakia, where a party was being thrown by one of his allies who was going to kill him over a $5 million deal, the story goes, and he was warned. He's also called Don Simeon, the Brainy Don, okay, the Brainy Don, Brain-E, right, Brainy, okay, it goes back to the sapiosexual movement, right? Who are these guys? These guys are connected to, you know, are protected by the FSB, which before that was the KGB. So, you know, we don't really have communist movements, but we have what they've evolved into, and that's basically what the FSB and him and his allies to a certain degree are associated with. Of course, we have him with the different racketeering activities, which includes fuel, you know, avoiding the fuel tax, which costs countries billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, reportedly, for one of these countries. Okay, he scammed fellow Russian Jews to make himself rich. He did 2 terms in prison during his early days, where he served 3 and 4 terms. 3 and 4 years. Okay, which kind of suggests that he was in some kind of Russian or Ukrainian or wherever he did his prison term, prison gang, which helped him get into the Russian mafia. You should take the time to look up these tattoos that these people have. Okay, he was also involved in banking. Right, one of Russia's largest private banks. He was a partner in owning, and so on. So we have claims of the Israeli intelligence infiltration of ISIS. Right, ISIS is the old name for the Mossad or something like that. Israeli secret intelligence services or something like that. Okay, so now let's look at some of the wordplay here. Oh yeah, he was also referred to as Simeon. Schneider, you know, his aliases, and Seaman, S-E-M-E-N. You can't make this up, right? So you have the Brainy Don and Seaman, and of course he's involved in prostitution and all these other rackets. You know, him and his allies, to say the least. Okay, that's common knowledge, right? Human trafficking, prostitution. These things are, you know, obviously associated with organized crime, and certainly with all due respect, without being anti-Semitic, Jewish organized crime groups, which include Israeli groups, Russian groups, Ukrainian groups, and so on. So you can see how this is a matter of honor, that I don't avoid the truth. I'm not a gang member. I'm a child of doctors. I hung out with gang members. I kind of seen it from the inside growing up. But, you know, when we look at this thing, of course, it includes the BGF and the NF, right? The Nuestra family. Why? Because they lean toward communism because of their Bay Area associates, okay? Oakland, San Francisco, and so on, okay? This leads them to lean toward the Russian mob, and so you have them playing both sides. You know them by their works, right? Why does the BGF and these other gangs, Mexican Mafia, they tend to ban Christianity, and the BGF tends to lean toward communism, and the Nuestra family, you know, is said to be against individualism, and their kind of philosophy, early on at least, was against communism. So we see this kind of, the evolution of these kind of communist networks through our prison systems. And the prison war being all but lost by, you know, in popular culture by the BGF and the NF to the MM, the Mexican Mafia, and the Aryan Brotherhood, and the Nazi lowriders and the Peckerwoods and all these other gangs, white gangs, and you know, minority gangs. Okay, these are solid connections. There's no other way it could be. Now let's look at the history, right? We find that tunneling, there's these tunnels that are said to go from Scotland, I don't know how they have managed that, all the way to Turkey, but certainly there are vast networks of tunnels going back 12,000 years, and you have the Vietnamese tunneling in in the Vietnam War. You have the tunnels, you know, trenches, obviously trench warfare. You have the tunneling being done by the Hittites, okay? We have Hittite caverns and so on, and we have other tunneling as part of a masonry, right? So masonry, you know, you have a degree of this, a degree of that. It goes up to 33 degrees in masonry. That's a large degree of Masonic influence in society, is one way to look at how to interpret that. So I think that's about everything I wanted to cover in this video. I want you to think carefully about how all these things are connected, right? Intelligence agencies, their disagreements, their rivalries, wars in various countries, the wars throughout history, how this thing reaches all the way to billionaires like Simeon Mogilevich, okay? You know, is considered the most dangerous mobster in the world by the FBI. Okay, he was eventually taken off the FBI's most wanted list. Well, why is that? You know, they said, well, it's because we don't have an extradition agreement with Russia, or I guess they don't. I'll have to look that up. You can put it in the comments if you want. I don't have, you know, I have my notes, you know. So anyway, what you see is definitely political groups, military groups, intelligence groups, FBI and so on. They all have their different roles in the Great Conspiracy, and they're representing for their organizations and races and ethnic groups and religions, and they're trying to get it in. But ultimately, behind the scenes, there's this occult alliance where people sit at the table, right? The round table group, the Club of Rome. What you see is the mace and the club are connected, and then you have the staff, the long stick. You know, these things were symbolized by machetes and swords and so on, and they became sticks over time to tone down the violence. Okay, so what you might very well be seeing is a sparring match in that picture in order to tone down the violence. Stick fighting, you know, and that goes back to ancient Egyptian stick fighting. I've covered that before, something to the effect of getting straight to the point, right? Let me prove that my spirit is yours. Spar it, spirit, okay? To spar, spire, you know, S-P-E-R-E, okay? Mentally sparring, you know, mind, body, and soul. I go over all the, okay, I didn't go over all these, my bad. Okay, Baphomet, ba, pay me, right? Pay the devil. You know, buff home, to my time. Time, oh, fib. Okay. Let's see, to my, that's hard to read that one, but time a fib, right? That's part of it. Okay, Baphomet backwards. Time a fib. Okay, the PH makes the F. Okay. Pure, pay raw, right? P-A-R-A. You do the wordplay, the vowel L, the vowels are interchangeable. Love, L-O-Vi. Okay, so the L, you know, who is the god? You vie through the sparring match, right? Bride, bridge, the G is silent. I went over the Mooney, okay, tree, going backwards. You can get ear, the T is the plus. You can also, from ear, you know, you can get heart. Heart, earth, you know, the T is the plus, the H is the fence, and E, art. Well, I'm out of time. Thank you.